Tintor this May, and was way too young. And he was really one of those guys that was always going all out, giving it all he had. He always had an opinion. He always cared very deeply. He always fought for the things he believed in, which are all good traits that we all should aspire to emulate. Cancer's a tough competitor, and unfortunately got the better of him. But here we are today. I want to thank my brothers Sean and Don Smith for donating to Penn the money to buy this Ford. And see here we have George was a member of 2 Olympic teams for Canada, 76 and 80. He started out the class of 79, but he took time off to run the Olympics, which is why he's officially the class of 80 kind of welcomed him to our ranks. Before we do the official naming, we should probably tell a couple of stories about George. I'll tell a recent one. I was back in, I was working a lot in Europe in software. I was visiting George. I remember Marina when she was like yay big, and always stayed at his house. And I saw him in 2006, saw that he had an erg he hadn't rode in like 26 years. And he said, yeah, I'm starting to train, I don't know if I'll ever row again, I'm trying to get back in shape. So then a month or 2 later, Prince Albert invited Vesper to come to the second Prince Albert Challenge ocean race in Monaco in February 2007. So we're scrounging around trying to get a 4th world quad. It was me, Eric Hamilton, there's a guy from Penn, Matt, someone. Anyways, he said, I got the guy. And called up George, said, George, we need you. You're just over the mountains. So he came down, he hadn't raced in like forever. We go out in a Cox quad, had a great row, and he was just a pleasure to be with. And he got the bug then, back again, and he started training, bought a single, raced for Grasshopper Zurich, kept rowing in all the Silver Skiff and all these Masters races and ocean-going things, and just having a great time. So I felt really happy that I was able to get him back into rowing for the last 15 years or so. Because he was my fraternity brother, my rowing buddy, and I really kept in touch with him. I was just really sad when he couldn't beat it. It's my story. Don, you have some remarks. Why don't you come on down?
I don't know if they can hear us.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective, maybe some more about George non-rowing, because I think everybody knows about George and rowing and what he did. George and I have been really good friends for 46 years. And we met in the fall of 1975 here in Philly on the freshman crew team and hit it off immediately. Unfortunately for our Frosh Penn rowing team, heavyweights, George left second semester to join the Canadian Olympic team and rowing in the 8 in Montreal in 1976. We went on to a dismal spring without George, I assure you. But fortunately, George returned to Penn and joined us in the crew and football fraternity, Kappa Sig, and participated in countless antics over the next 3 years before graduating in 1980. He actually couldn't row at Penn after the Olympics because the Canadian Olympic team gave him a stipend of $500 a month. And the NCAA came down on him, and I remember Ted Nash telling him, George, you can't accept this money. You've got to row for us. And he's like, my father's a janitor. I can't do this. You know, I need this money. And so he rowed here at Vesper for the next 3 years. George entered the finance world in New York City, and I headed for Oklahoma and Texas to try my hand in the oil industry. George made his way through Columbia Business School and then worked for DLJ in the go-go early 80s and ended up in London working for Bank Indosuez. And it was, I remember asking George what he really did. And his answer was, we buy and sell anything. And his example was, we will buy a super tanker of oil as it leaves the Middle East, and if the price has gone up, we will then sell it as it rounds the Horn of Africa. And I'm thinking, that is high finance. So around 1983, George and I concocted a plan to sell my oil deals in Europe. It didn't work out so well.
None of my investments in your oil worked out so well either, as I recall.
No, but I remember particularly one potential investor in London who kept falling asleep during my presentation to him. And he was the only guy I was presenting to. George attended my wedding in Oklahoma City. I actually married Pamela. She's here. And wearing a cowboy hat at the reception with all the other groomsmen. Brad is here also. A few years later, Pamela and I, along with some of our Penn friends who are here tonight, attended his Serbian wedding in Zurich, where he had moved. George and Isabel had three incredibly clever and witty daughters, one of which is here, Marina, Diana, and Anushka. Marina's the middle. They would frustrate George incredibly by joking and laughing with each other in Swiss German, which George never knew. George and his family would visit us at our extended family's Cape home almost every summer. George was a creature of habit. He needed to sleep in the same room, third floor, first room on the left. If he arrived at the Cape in the morning, he needed to visit the Daily Brew for a double espresso and a fruit smoothie. If he arrived in the afternoon, he was off to the chart run for mudslides. After his daughters became young adults, George re-entered the rowing world, as Brian said, with his usual passion. He participated yearly in the Head of the Charles, usually in a single to mediocre results. But a couple of years ago, he came to the fore from Zurich that did really well. He rowed all over Europe, including the Swiss Championships, where he won several times. We started a tradition of meeting at the Cape with other Penn oarsmen, frat brothers, and Penn football players, hosted by a former Penn running back, Kevin Blake, at his house, where we would gather poolside for many stories and beers. George always treasured these gatherings and never missed one. We came together again last summer, and it was bittersweet without George, although many stories were retold about George's life and travels. In the summer of 2020, during the height of the pandemic lockdown, George basically snuck into the U.S. from Toronto, where he was back living for his yearly dose of Cape Cod. While we were on the Cape, he decided to show me that he could still do stadium steps, and tried to run up the back porch steps with 2 5-gallon full propane tanks. He made it up halfway, missed a step and face planted, resulting in 2 full propane tanks bouncing down the steps toward me. We had a nice trip to the emergency room for stitches on his nose, and he returned home to Canada with 2 black eyes. After George got sick, he never really hesitated in his determination to come back. He powered through his chemo and radiation treatments, always talking about how he was going to come back and restart his training in rowing. He was always planning on what he was going to do. He even sent me a glossy book on the British Virgin Islands, where he was insistent that we were going to go for a trip, and because he loved it so much. I know many of you saw him online ring the hospital bell, signaling the completion of his treatment. So it came as a complete shock to have the resurgence of his cancer take his life in a matter of weeks. I'm honored to be able to participate in the dedication of this boat that in some small way will perpetuate George's name and the sport he loves so much. I miss you, my friend. Here's to you.
Thank you, John.
You're here.
Yep.